It is true. The Office of National Statistics very clearly says that the average public sector worker earns 6% more than the average private sector worker, and they take more time off sick, more time off on holiday. So, frankly, the public sector, in terms of their stupid demands for 19%, 11%, 12%, whatever they're all asking for, they don't get sympathy from me, I'm afraid.
And I think that sympathy, that they seem to assume that there's massive public support for their industrial action. There's definitely some support. It's not as big as they think it is, and it will dissipate when people start to die.
Yes.
They better get used to this. This is the Daily Mirror's ridiculous front page. Some guy collapsed near a nurse's picket line, so 2 nurses went over to help him.
Yeah.
There they are, crouched over this collapsed person. This is what compassion looks like. Yeah. And then that guy's going to be a guy, maybe it's a woman, I'm not sure, will get taken into the hospital where there won't be any nurses to tend to them and might die because of it.
Yeah.
Is that compassionate?
But we also know, Kevin, you definitely know, given your the length of your career, that if you wanted to send a journalist or a photographer out to find 2 nurses coming out of a food bank or 2 nurses finding someone on the street despite the fact that they're on strike, you'd find that fairly easily. And that is not representative necessarily. So one picture on the front of a red Labour-leaning rag is not representative of reality.
No, indeed. What else have we got? What front pages?
Telegraph's interesting.
The Express, as I say, have gone on. What are the Telegraph saying?
Well, they're saying NHS is now on high alert for a flu outbreak.
Oh, God, not
Here we go again.
Well, surely not COVID. Can't they wheel out COVID?
Well, actually, there's a story. There's a story elsewhere in the Mail.
Don't tell me the NHS is going to be overwhelmed.
Well, yeah, the NHS is going to break, but it certainly would if there's no nurses. That's for sure. But they're now saying that shock horror, and this is actually in a way veiled good news, that flu cases have now exceeded COVID cases. Now, I take that to mean that COVID is now completely and utterly under control, because flu is back and COVID is now taking a back seat in clinical terms. But of course we've always had flu, and flu, I'm not saying it doesn't kill people, I know it does, and we obviously shouldn't kind of underplay that. But flu is flu. Unfortunately, when we have headlines that say we're on high alert and the NHS is going to break as a consequence of flu, you'll get some nutters on the left that now say, well, maybe we should consider some flu lockdowns. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Oh, God.
Let's
just lock down for all sorts of reasons, shall we? And let's talk to the Dr. Lawrence Buckman. He is a former NHS GP and former chair of the BMA GPs committee. Good morning, Lawrence.
Good morning.
What's your feeling about this? As I say, I've been trying to make the point that when I, in my view, say I don't think nurses should be able to strike, because make no mistake, when nurses walk out of hospitals, patient safety is severely compromised. It will get even worse when the ambulance drivers walk out. I think they should possibly not be allowed to strike at all either. When I say frontline workers, medical workers should not be allowed to strike, doesn't mean that I don't have sympathy with their demands for pay. But we're talking about lives. Surely human lives are more important than any industrial action can ever be. Should we should we think about laws to stop nurses, doctors and ambulance drivers, 999 operators going on strike?
I think there's a difference between stopping all action, stopping all types of striking, and those who deal with everything other than emergencies. The College of Nurses, as far as I know, have said that they are going to continue to cover emergencies, A&E, emergency treatments and so on. So they're not walking off the wards completely, and they're certainly not walking off the front line. I think their withdrawal of Labour from everywhere else is very understandable. I think they've been very ill-served by their review body, and the reaction to the review body by the government, that's no surprise. The governments have always done that with the review body. And I think there is a very good case for them to go back to the review body, present new evidence, and abide by whatever the review body says second time round. The fact that the review body pronounced in February, a lot of things have changed since February, and I think it would be worth the government saying, let's appoint the review body to do the job again now in December.
Don't you think, though, Lawrence, is somewhat disingenuous? I mean, the nurses are saying that mainly they want a 19% pay rise, which, of course, they're not going to get anything like, and they know it. But they put in the caveat, our strike is also about patient safety. We're worried about patient safety because there's not enough nurses to adequately care for the patients, etc., etc. Fair enough. But to say you care about patient safety in the long term and then effectively say, well, we don't care about it in the short term because we're going on strike, there's something disingenuous and strange about that. And let's make no mistake, when the nurses walk out of hospitals, people will die. It's the same for ambulance drivers. That's the equation. Does any industrial action warrant the death of people? I would suggest no.
I would agree with you. If people die, that would not be okay. And I think that would be tragic, both for the patients, of course, and their families, and the nurses as well, because they don't want that kind of publicity. As far as I know, they are covering emergencies.
Yeah, but Lawrence, I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, they've been saying that. They're bound to say that. But you and I know, you know it more than I do. You know, it's all very well to say, we'll cover all emergencies, but there won't be enough nurses to adequately care for patients when they're on strike. There just won't be. And that means people will be very adversely affected to the point that some patients will die. Same for the ambulance strike. So they'll say, we'll go to all life or death cases. How do they know what the life or death cases are? When they walk out, patients will suffer. And that's the truth, isn't it?
Patients suffer in any action that takes place in the NHS. Whoever you are in the NHS, somebody suffers somewhere. And the only way of avoiding that is to have a pay review structure, which for a long, long time has been the pay review bodies. There's the doctors and dentists pay review body, and the same for the nurses, and equally the same for other services like that, the fire brigade and the army and so on. And the way that's dealt with is you agree to abide by a decision taken by a so-called independent body, which isn't quite independent, but at least it's nearer than negotiating direct with the government. And I think if the government were wise, in order to stop this now, and the nurses have indicated I think they would do that, is for the government to say, review body, do your job again.
Yeah,
that's what should happen.
Absolutely. Now, I've been giving the nurses a hard time in the interest of fairness. I mean, they do say that they've offered to get round the table with the government, and that the government won't listen to them, won't get round the table. If this is true, I mean, what is the government playing at?
I don't know. I have witnessed this, of course, firsthand for years with governments who are not very comfortable negotiating directly, and so they use the review body as a smokescreen. But of course, they do pay the review body, and they do tell them what they want them to give whoever the subjects are. So I think the government will be very well advised to use the smokescreen and face saving of a review body, and the nurses will be well advised to sit down with the review body, present their evidence properly, and then they can decide whether the deal is good enough.
Yeah, they've got to do it, yeah. Lawrence, great to talk.